This is Brevard Watch, the news experience focused exclusively on Florida's Space Coast. This is Brevard Watch. I'm Matt Reed. My thanks to Brevard Public Schools for making today's interview and news headlines from across the Space Coast possible. We hope you learn a lot. My guest today is new school superintendent Mark Mullins. He's new to this job, but hardly new to the Space Coast. Dr. Mullins, thanks for joining us, and welcome to the BPS TV studio. Tell us a little bit about your background. How did your preparation and your experience in Brevard Public Schools prepare you to be a superintendent?
Sure. Well, let me begin a little bit of how I came to Brevard County. I originally grew up in the Midwest, native to Chicago area, and my wife is actually a Brevardian, true Brevardian. She was born and raised in South Brevard, and she came up to the Midwest to go to college, and we met happenstance through a mutual friend, and began dating and later engaged, and remember pretty explicitly scraping ice on the windshield of my car as we were getting ready to go to a family event over the holidays, and my wife, all bundled up like a Floridian would be in the blistery November Midwestern weather, said, what would you think about us living in Florida when we get married? And I said, let me go get my stuff. So that began our consideration of coming south. We were married in Satellite Beach, and began our life in South Florida. I was I'm a second career educator, so I began in the banking and finance world, and was pursuing a degree in accounting, and working with youth in our church at the time as a young couple. Realized that I loved working with young people, and certainly loved numbers, and those two worlds came together, and so then we moved up to Tallahassee for me to finish my degree at Florida State. Then Brevard was doing some recruiting for new teachers, and I had the opportunity to come to Brevard, and it certainly was a win-win when I came home and told my wife, it looks like we're going home. So,
and it looked like just what you pictured that day in Chicago, scraping your windows.
That's right. Yeah, it was neat to come back to Brevard, a little bit of a familiar area, and started teaching at Cocoa Beach. Taught for 6 years, and then had several different leadership experiences that now I look back on. May have wondered why I had those then, but now I look back, and one was the director of a large federal grant. It was a mental health and social services grant that we received as a district, and it was Department of Juvenile Justice, Human and Health Services, and DOE at the time. It's about $5.5 million over 3 years. And this is now probably 18 years ago. But the focus was strengthening family supports. It was to bring counseling service referrals for mental health to students who didn't qualify for Medicaid or have those kind of counseling options as part of their family resources.
And we hear a lot about that these days.
We do.
This huge focus on social and emotional health, taking care of that so that kids can be prepared to learn.
Exactly. So that early introduction to the mental health world is now serving us well as we face kind of a whole new reprioritization of that effort and that focus today. So I look back on that and really appreciate that experience. And then, of course, I was an assistant principal at the middle and high school level, principal at the middle school level for 5 years, served as area superintendent. That time as area superintendent, I really built some strong community relationships with the NAACP, with Children's Hunger Project, United Way, really expanded my greater community effort, and then over the last 2 years served as a chief operating officer. And that opportunity gave me really a behind-the-scenes look at the operations of the district. Obviously, we're the largest employer in the district, but we virtually are a whole ecosystem of our own. Everything from building schools to repairing schools to transporting kids, feeding,
buying stuff, school security.
Exactly. So the whole other world, in fact, I didn't probably realize it at the time, but our operations budget is every bit as large as our academic budget. So it gave me the opportunity to really see behind the scenes what the other side of the operation was, and I was charged from the superintendent to seek efficiencies in the organization and improve and increase communication across the organization so that we had the academic world understanding what the operations world was doing, and even more importantly, the operations world understanding what was going on in the academic world, so that we had a very cohesive strategic process of projects and initiatives and so on. So all of that experience led to now walking into the superintendency having a very broad and rather deep understanding of all of the facets of the organization, that I don't have to ask quite as many questions when working with cabinet members or staff and understanding the interworkings of the organization. And I think it helps me be a little bit more efficient as we work toward our strategic objectives.
Is it hard for you as a leader, or liberating to you, to go from being somebody who's really down in the gears of operations, working and looking at spreadsheets and working with managers, to now being the CEO, where you're thinking more big picture, you're thinking more forward and getting out and engaging more with the community? What's your take so far?
Well, I see the role now as COO really capitalizing on partnerships and opportunities across the community, and seeing where we can bring different facets together to maximize opportunities for our kids, but then also working with cabinet members. So the benefit is I understand what the spreadsheets are they're going to go and look at, and I can offer some suggestions. Don't forget to take a look at the cost-benefit analysis we did 18 months ago when we pursued something. So I think it helps provide some breadth of experience, but I'm certainly not at the place anymore that I dig into that work directly, but I can certainly help staff know where to go to find the information they're looking for.
You talk about yourself being a continuous improvement person. It's hard to improve overall student performance in a district with 69,000 students and what we would consider our public schools. And every 12 years, that group of students changes. But what are your goals for student performance as superintendent?
Well, you're right, Matt. I have been accused of being a continuous improvement idealist. And if that's the worst I'm ever accused of being, life is good, because I believe we have to commit to being committed to continuous improvement. We have lots of successes in our student achievement. We have one of the top graduation rates in the state. We're recognized as one of the top STEM education districts in the state in preparing students for later STEM careers. Our industry certification programs and opportunities for students, our dual enrollment participation, the number of AA degrees that our students achieve are great. Our third grade reading results have shown improvement over the last 3 years. But we've got room for improvement, and there's certainly cases of that. We need to dive into further our Algebra 1 performance at the middle school level and into the early high school years. Make sure that that is not a gatekeeper from students advancing into advanced programs and opportunities. Working with Leading and Learning to provide our teachers some additional supports and resources to enhance the instruction they're doing, and give them some progress monitoring tools to help us know how students are progressing along the way. And I believe that even though we're top of the state in our graduation rate, it's my commitment that we continue to move to 100% graduation rate. We have the opportunity to bring our kids through the system. We've got to continually strive to improve that rate so that we know every student that comes to us, wherever they start in the spectrum, has the opportunity to finish to be either college or career ready when they leave us. So we're going to continue to tackle our grad rate. We talk about it all the time, and look for opportunities to help our students and what we can do to help them along the way. So we're continuing to tackle those student achievement pieces. We are going to focus on our, what we call the achievement gap, the gap between our non-free and reduced lunch students and those that across the poverty socioeconomic lines and ensure that all of our students have the opportunity to excel and achieve. So those are the things we're going to continue to work on as a district moving forward.
You've been asked this probably by a dozen reporters leading up to the first day of school, but give us a sense of 2 or 3 things that parents and the community might see that's new in Brevard Public Schools this school year.
Sure. Number one, very visibly, they're going to see enhanced security on our campuses. You're going to see law enforcement on our campuses virtually every day. We're moving towards an SRO on every campus. We're not quite there yet because our law enforcement partners, although they've been fantastic to help us gear up that initiative, they have their own human capital challenges, and we're working with them through that. So we have our security specialists that will be filling in those positions in the meantime. Parents will be hearing about, learning about, and experiencing training opportunities that we'll have with our students. Even somewhat we'll share with parents, as well as we'll be doing critical incident drills in our schools that include an active shooter response drill, and our law enforcement partners will be helping lead administrators through that process as they then also implement their crisis response plans that we've developed over the summer with all of our schools. So that's a very visible difference that parents will see. They'll also see that we have more staff available to respond to students in crisis. We have an increase in social workers across our district, in the process of onboarding 16 additional social workers. We've also secured counseling services for students beyond the school day. So if we're working with a child and they're needing some additional support, some counseling, mental health support, we can provide a counseling referral to students, and we've got contracted services already in place for our schools. We're adding some additional support staff to guidance offices, so guidance counselors can spend more time in that face-to-face relationship with kids, and not as much time on the administrative duties. So those are things that our parents are going to see hopefully very readily as they come onto our campuses.
When we come back, questions for Superintendent Mark Mullins about school security. Now, check out this BPS TV update by Rachel Horst about an organization that teaches students how to become gentlemen, starting with how to tie a tie.
About 5 years ago, through our church, I started volunteering at Cambridge Elementary in Cocoa. And spending time with the kids and starting to ask them about their family, I realized not a lot of intact families that I grew up with and I took for granted. And so I started thinking with these boys, what's a simple thing I can do? Well, I can teach them how to shake hands and tie a tie. Start with the basics. And so from that, I did my 5th graders. And so I went to the tennis club and started talking to a friend of mine who's a teacher at Stone. And he says, I love the idea. Can you come do it at our school? And before I knew what I was doing, I said yes. We have been in existence for about 4 years. We are a 501(c)(3), and come by the end of February, we will have poured into the lives of 6,000 young men.
My favorite thing about today was seeing the smile on those 7th graders' faces when they accomplished the task of tying that tie. Just the sense of accomplishment.
It's a simple gesture that can go a long way. I remember being taught how to tie by my coach in the 7th grade, and to this day I tie the exact same way.
They're hungry. They're hungry for somebody to be an example for them, hungry for somebody just to be kind, to reach out to them, shake their hand, look them in the eye, and tell them that they're valued.
We have an incredible group of community leaders. We have elected officials, school board members, active retired military, a variety of businessmen, doctors, lawyers, pastors. But the element we're missing that is so important is the dads of the sons themselves taking part. I think it would just do an incredible service to both the sons and the fathers when the sons come out here and they see their dad in front of all their classmates. They got to be in with a little bit of embarrassment, but pride. But then when the dads look at the sons, the responsibility will just be overwhelming to them. And I'd love to see that as the next step for us tied together getting volunteers. It's those father-son moments with 2 people that are not likely to be father and son. It's the 2 students teaching each other are precious. And then as they get together in a group, or they're looking in a mirror at themselves and they're standing straighter and they have that smile, that self-confidence that they didn't have walking in. That is what I get.
They impact our lives also. You know, we tend to think that we're helping, but to see them start over and how motivated they are in life, it continues to motivate us as adults.
It's important to give back and plug in. I mean, I think that above all, because a lot of them just were so glad to see me and so glad to be a part of what was going on, and so thankful for this experience. And so I learned personally that I have to do things like this even more often than I already do.
So when they walk in, they come into the gym, we welcome them, we tell them who's there, what we're going to do, and teach the basics of being a gentleman, of tying a tie and shaking hands. And we teach the history of the handshake. And then we will tell them why we are here. And that is really important, that they understand why all these men have taken time out of their day to spend with them. When we first go into a school, we do the entire school. So no young man is left out. When we revisit a school, we take the incoming class and we teach them how to tie the tie and do the gentlemanly things and the life lessons. Then we take the outgoing class and we have an open forum. And that is whatever's on their mind. We go around, we introduce each other, introduce ourselves for about 30 seconds, just so they know the flavor of the people that are there. But then we'll answer any question that those boys happen to have on their mind. Because what other time do they have to ask a question in a non-threatening environment with no judging whatsoever?
We get emails afterwards. You know, usually they come to the principal forwards them to us. And we got this one email from this one mom. And she said, I woke up this morning and my son was tying a tie. And he'd been tying that tie all night long. And he said, Mom, it's Mother's Day and I did this for you. And that was a young man. And in the email she says, you know my son because he's in your office every day and every week for not good reasons. But you touched him that day. You touched him in a way I never could. He has no father figure in his life. And you showed him that he can step in a better direction. That's what it's all about.
This is Brevard Watch. I'm Matt Reed. My thanks to Brevard Public Schools for making our third season of interviews and news headlines possible. This is an exclusive blend you won't find anywhere else, and it's easy to catch up on the best of our past interviews with Space Coast newsmakers. They're all on YouTube. Just search for Brevard Watch. My guest today is new Brevard School Superintendent Mark Mullins. Watch. So Brevard Public Schools recently celebrated a golden padlock moment where we installed the final segment of fencing around the school at Jackson Middle School that was a part of a big district-wide project. We now have a single point of access at every school. It's tougher to get on, but it leads to the natural question, are parents and others still welcome in our schools? What's your take?
Oh, great question, and absolutely. Parents, community members, volunteers, we need you. We want you to be part of our school community. The security measures we put in place are to keep the individuals out that don't need to be there, that shouldn't be there. It's not, that's certainly no reflection on our welcoming parents on the campus. We ask that parents help us in the security and the safety of our campuses. We believe that the safest and most secure school is where everybody owns the security of the school. Our students own their safety along with us, the staff and the faculty, the administration, law enforcement, and even our guests and our parents. When they come onto campus, you help us ensure that our school stays safe. So we ask that, you know, our guests, our parents, honor the security measures we have in place, come through the single point of access, go through the check-in process, and also be an active participant in ensuring the safety of our campus. But we look forward to working with our parents and our volunteers over the school year.
Of course, those fences are just one layer in the bulletproof vest that Sheriff Ivey described as a strategy for trying to keep our schools more secure. One of them that was a really difficult question for the school board to answer was what to do about this new ability to put guardians on campus. The legislature included some money and created this new authority to take volunteer staff members, not classroom teachers, but staff members, run them through a sheriff's training program, arm them, and put them on campuses to potentially confront a rampage shooter of some kind or active gunman. Brevard went in a little bit of a different direction after listening to the community at a lot of town hall meetings, which were painful at times. Describe that. Is it still the Guardian program, or is it Guardian Plus? What's up?
Well, it really is the Guardian program. The only reason we're able to take advantage of this is because the legislator gave the opportunity for school district employees to go through a sheriff-approved training program to be then given permission to carry a firearm and be on campus. So ultimately, we are taking advantage of the Guardian program. What's a little different is that we've made the decision as a school district, we're going to bring on staff whose sole responsibility is to focus on security. They have a sole purpose, and that is to support the safety and security of our campus. And as part of that role, they'll participate in the Guardian training. They'll be approved and credentialed to have a firearm and on campus, and they will be responding. There'll be a defense in the potential worst situation on a campus. But they're dedicated to security. So we're really getting the best of both worlds.
And they're reliable. You can assign them, and if they don't show up, you can hold them accountable, as opposed to a volunteer who may or may not want to continue with something like that.
Correct, and we can provide the ongoing training that we feel is important and necessary to be part of the school culture, be part of the administrative team. One of the things we're working right now is our guardians or our safety specialists are going through training right now with the Sheriff's Department. We anticipate onboarding them here in a few weeks. But before we deploy them to our schools, we're going to provide our own Brevard Public Schools orientation so that they understand what their roles, responsibilities are. They understand the school culture that they're going to be joining, what our expectations are of working with the administration. So there's a very cohesiveness. They're a Brevard Public School employee. They'll wear a badge just like all employees, and they'll be part of the team. So we're looking to really orient them to the school that they're going to be in, and so they feel confident in their roles and responsibilities.
You were the guy who had to, as chief operating officer, had to negotiate with, 16 different police agencies to work out how on earth we were going to afford to put resource officers in all of our schools. Some of the cities were crying uncle because they didn't have enough money, or they didn't think they could hire enough officers to do the job. How would you size up how those went, and the cities and counties' commitment to this mandate to put more police in our schools?
If we look at the amount of, the governor raised the bar in school security, and we certainly understand and we respect why. We all were paused and shaken by what happened just a couple hundred miles away. The timeline was aggressive. Legislators had an aggressive timeline themselves to find the funding that they did provide for the initiative. I have to say that our law enforcement partners have totally risen to the occasion. We came together early. The sheriff certainly led the way and initiated the conversation and helped keep the conversation going with the agencies across our district. And we worked together to find what would be a reasonable cost share arrangement between the school district and the law enforcement agencies. The challenge is they can't meet the human capital demands. In many cases, some of our law enforcement agencies are shorthanded by many officers themselves. They're trying to keep up with their own hiring. We then put on them, we need, in one case, one of our law enforcement partners needed to add 14 SROs. That's not realistic in a short few months. So that's where the conversation around the Guardian or the security specialist program came in. Our security specialists aren't ready to be deployed. Those same law enforcement partners came forward and said, we could probably manage off-duty officers for a short period of time until you get your security specialists in place and until we can get SROs assigned. So we worked with them again in an arrangement of paying off-duty officers to fill those gaps during this interim. So not only have we come to them with some requests and asks, they've come back to us with some suggestions and some potential solutions. So it's been a very two-way communicative process. I will tell you, as I talk to colleagues across the state, not every district is anywhere near the same place that we are. They're still working out and trying to figure out who's going to pay for, how are we going to staff security in their schools. I'm overwhelmingly pleased to say we're well beyond that. We're working in conjunction with our partners.
Without disclosing too many operational details, but what do you see as the next big things when it comes to security? There was more in the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas Act to think about. There could be things that Brevard Public Schools has on its capital spending list. What do you foresee?
Sure. Well, part of the Public Safety Act was the Hardening Your Schools grant. We're waiting to submit our request for funds for that, and we've identified certain enhancements to our existing hardening measures. We anticipate enhancing our single point of access initiative. We found some gaps that we want to shore up. We want to tighten them up. It's kind of like building a new house. When we went out and single point of access and access control at 80 plus sites across a district with about 50 to 60 different blueprints. You walk away from a project just like you do building a new home. Boy, I wish we would have an electrical outlet over there, or I wish we would have put a gate here. So we've gone back and done a second phase 2 assessment, and we've identified those areas that we want to do some enhancements. So that's on the list. We also want to enhance our communication and our notification process, improving communication both within the school system and out to our law enforcement partners. So we're looking to do those projects.
All right, new subject. What do you think are the chances of teachers and other BPS employees getting a raise this year? Money seems to be tight. What's going on?
Yeah, it probably is no surprise. It is a tough year. It was a tough funding year. A lot of categorical funding came out.
Security.
Security, the biggest of them. Between that and mental health services, all great needs in our district, but the reality is it takes funding away, discretionary funding away for us to consider those for salary compensation. We're continuing to look through our budget to see what we would have available to work with our collective bargaining units to bring to the table. It's going to be a tough year. There's no other way to put it. We would love to do more. We want to do more. We're not necessarily leading the way in employee compensation, so we've got to start looking at some other options. So it's going to be a process.
Even if we have a normal good year next year, and let's say there's a full cost of living raise in there that everybody's happy with, is it going to make it easier to recruit teachers? It seems like across America, pay isn't what we all think teachers ought to be earning, and then it's getting even tougher to get into the profession. What's going on there?
Well, I certainly, salary and compensation is something that we all have to give consideration to in a profession that we pursue and have taken interest in. The greater challenge we're seeing in education is the individuals, the kids going in the doors of the university to formally pursue a career in education are far less than they've been in the past. And then at the end, them coming out of those doors with a diploma going to, become a teacher like I did 25 years ago, those numbers are even less than the ones that walked in. So we've got a compounded problem where we're going to have to start looking outside the box and seeking alternative routes for individuals to come into the family of education and hopefully give them opportunity to see how rewarding and how noble of a profession we have. to really overcome some human capital challenges that we're facing. It's really at all levels, at the teaching level, at the guidance counselor level, social workers, school psychologists. We're having to really think hard about how we recruit, and are we recruiting the same way we've always recruited? So that will be a priority for us this year, is finding new innovative ways. I don't have those solutions yet, but that will be one of my priorities with staff, is to look at how do we enhance our net of seeking the highest, the best qualified, the best and brightest employees and workforce for our district.
Thanks for sharing your time with us. Well, that's our program. My thanks to Superintendent Mark Mullins for joining us in the BPS TV studio. And thanks again to Brevard Public Schools for making today's interview and news headlines possible. We think they're educational. Our producer, editor, and drone pilot is Mike Francisco. I'm Matt Reed. Watch for new episodes of Brevard Watch Sunday mornings at 7:30 and 11:30 right here on Spectrum Channel 496. Or get our highlights right in your Facebook newsfeed. Just like the Brevard Public Schools official Facebook page.